Hey guys, so in this video we're going to go over a crit crossbow setup. This is probably the best setup you can do for any kind of crossbow build, or maybe even attack build, I'm not really sure, but basically going crit is way better than I thought, and pretty much like 3x damage even without having proper crit gear. Considering you can get like, it's pretty easy to get around 500 crit multi. And when you have so much crit multi, like I've gotten up to like 900 crit multi in some setups, and that's like 9x damage, right? So when you have that much crit multi, even 20% crit chance is a huge damage increase, right? So this build actually does get a lot more than 20% crit chance, but yeah, the tree is pretty flexible. I'd say like you can adapt this to pretty much any Ascendancy. Maybe might be harder for people on the left side of the tree, but Mercenary, Deadeye can do it as well. I'm actually playing this on a Monk, and I think Monk is actually probably going to be the best Ascendancy for crossbow, mainly just because of how much quality of life you get. You get a lot of damage, you get some nice damage cooldowns, and that kind of stuff. So we'll go over the build today. We'll go over the PoB and that kind of stuff, do some showcases, and I will try to remake this setup on the Witch Hunter as well, because that's the build that I started with, and I think Witch Hunter can do it as well. It'll just be a little bit worse, I think. All right, so we have a Steaming Springs map. We'll run a Delirious map with some quant and that kind of stuff. And someone's gonna probably say that hey, your movement speed's really slow, and just my boots, I found these boots with an open prefix, and I just slammed on 25%, so I've been using these ever since. Pretty insane pair of boots. But anyways, you can get quite a bit more movement speed if you want, get better boots. You can pick up some movement speed on the tree, get movement speed jewels, and what have you, right? So it doesn't really concern me that much, but you can kind of change the build to suit your needs. You want to move faster, then you go for more movement speed stuff. You want to be a little more tanky, because the setup I'm running is like enough tankiness to pretty much just not die most of the time. Like I actually haven't even died since I started this character anyways. But yeah, let's go through the map. We do have blink on a our main weapon set, so we can blink around and be pretty mobile. And you can see we have the double herald set up. We've got pretty much all the bells and whistles you could say that a modern PoE2 build should have. And I don't know, it's kind of funny even just saying that, but yeah, so we have of course we have the herald stacking, we have blink, we have pretty good clear, we have enough single target to two-shot, or not two-shot, but kill the T4 Zesh in like 2 seconds. And yeah, mobility pretty good, I'd say. And yeah, we have enough defense to pretty much never die. I'd say, like, yeah, haven't died on this character yet. And you see, even with just like galvanic shards, that was like a Kosis, right? And even just galvanic shards, you just blast them, right? Don't even have to swap over to the shock burst rounds for most of these like rares and maps and everything. Like for bosses, maybe you want to swap over, but yeah, and just why blink is so good, right? You can just like go across these ridges. But anyways, let's go and find the breach. All right, well, let's open up the breach and see how it goes. And in breaches, this setup is pretty amazing because of the I guess the herald chaining, and then galvanic shards. Now I have it set up with fork, and also the what do you call it, the one where it like chains off terrain, because it's just had extra gem slots and didn't need extra damage. But yeah, that actually works out a lot better in closed maps like Augury and those kind of bad map layouts. Oh, we have another breach. Nice. I guess we can do 2 breaches. Wow, I mean, that explosion's pretty crazy, right? And I really do want to try this on Witch Hunter with like triple explosions, so I think it's kind of overkill, and maybe the Witch Hunter explosions are actually going to hurt your other explosions, maybe, because they're like physical, but I think it'll be pretty crazy. Yeah, this is like the best clear you can get on crossbow. I mean, it's not really crossbow that's doing the clear, it's like the heralds, right? Someone's gonna say in the comments like it's just how stat stacking, but that's like, I don't know, that's just kind of like a problem with the game, right? Anyways, they can stop like stunning me. And that's kind of why blink is really nice, right? Because you get like stuck in a corner, like mobs stunning you, you can just blink out of it, right? Or just blink into mobs and blast them. But yeah, if anyone is playing crossbow, this, I mean, come on, this is like pretty insane, right? I'm actually having fun playing crossbow again. I stopped playing crossbow because the like clear wasn't all as good as like my spark character, but this is actually like pretty comparable as far as like, you know, full screen explosions and that kind of stuff. All right, so I guess we should sort of talk about the single target setup. So previously I was running the Storm Caller Arrow with a bow, and that was working out pretty good, but now in this setup I want to be triggering quite a few gems on my cast on shock, and the Stormcaller arrow is just a little bit too slow, even with like some energy gain and that kind of stuff. I mean, I tested like 30 plus breaches running these to see what, you know, first of all, what single target setup is going to be the best for like the shock burst rounds, and then also you know, what is the best way to get the shock going. And for me, I found that the Tempest Flurry setup that I was running in my previous sort of like meme build, kind of you could say, was actually the best way to apply shock, and like the fastest as well. So also you can do some kind of interesting things with like rage on hit, so we get a little bit of rage too. But yeah, and you might think like, well, I don't want to be in melee range on a range class, but you actually do want to be in melee range when you're doing single target with shock burst rounds, because first of all, if you're too far, they're going to start to miss, right? Because you get the accuracy penalty at range, and sometimes they just miss altogether. And then also there's like the bolt travel time, right? So if you're far away, you shoot the bolt and it has to actually travel to hit the target. So if you're right up close to them, there's no travel time at all, and all the damage is just like instant. Anyways, so let's go kill him off and see what happens. I don't know, I think like this setup isn't super optimized, but this kind of crit version is definitely the way to go for I don't know, I guess like max damage. Like this is like pretty good, I'd say. All right, so let's get our shocks up, and I think we got him. All right. And yeah, he's just dead. And no gloves. Man, you know, out of all the 30 plus I ran, I think it was like this one I ran just now is like about 36 or so. I only got one pair of Hand of Wisdom in action. Alright, so let's go over the gear. First of all, the weapon, the most important part of the build. And so guys, what is the most important stat on a crossbow? And most players probably gonna get it wrong, but it's the critical hit chance, the flat critical hit chance, right? Just because crit is, you know, even with like 20% crit chance and like 400 multi, it's definitely worth it to go crit. So crit is the most important stat on this weapon. In fact, I can actually remove all of the flat damage on my weapon, like the flat added cold, or if I have any flat fizz or any flat added lightning, and, you know, still be doing millions of DPS because of crit. Now that's assuming that we have flat damage from Hand of Wisdom in action and from breach rings, right? If you don't have a lot of flat damage, then you probably want to get a bit more on the weapon. Aside from that, the second most important stat, attack speed, right? We do need a fast attacking weapon. And then the elemental damage with attacks. Those three stats, that's all you need on a weapon. Just flat crit chance, attack speed, increase elemental damage with attacks, and that's it. Now this is assuming, yeah, right, you know, you're doing a Hawa setup. If you're not, then like I said, get more fizz or get some lightning. It can be any kind of damage, doesn't matter, because we're not, you know, it doesn't matter. We're not using lightning infusion on our main damage setup, so it really doesn't matter. Okay, so after that, we use Hawa. I mean, they're really cheap now, and I will be making a non-Hawa setup, guys, for like budget build, like ultra budget setup. Probably end up doing that on the Witch Hunter. I do want to go back to Mercenary and kind of redo the builds that I made from like, you know, day one or like week one in early access, right? So we'll go over and redo all of those eventually. Okay, so rings. What do we want on the rings? This one's probably a little bit better to look at. So we want flat lightning damage, increased lightning damage, Dex, Int, all attributes, Strength, maybe even all resistances. And then for the last prefix, maybe if you can, then you get flat evasion. That's like a mirror tier ring. Aside from that, a ring like this works as well, just flat added lightning and some resistances. Pretty important just to get the flat because of the ingenuity. Even if you don't have ingenuity, then these stats are going to be best in slot. Okay, belt, yeah, ingenuity belt. If you don't have one of these, then you get a normal belt with stats, resistances. I don't know if evasion can roll on belts, but if it can, you get evasion. And then you just want to get strength probably, because strength can roll on belts and you do need some strength. Okay, boots, helmet, same thing pretty much. You just want energy shield, high energy shield, resistances, and if you can get intelligence, get intelligence. Okay, so for the body armor, since we are playing a monk and we are using the talent over here that gives us spirit from our body armor, we do need to make sure that we have enough evasion rating and energy shield, and you can check. So you can just copy the armor with Control C, right? And then we can go into PoB, we can push Control V, put it in, add to build, and we can swap over to this, and we can kind of see over here how much total spirit this is going to give us, how much we need, etc. Right? So you can check the body armor you're going to buy before you actually go and buy it to make sure you get enough spirit. Okay, amulet. So this amulet, it's like a stat stacker amulet, right? You go basically just all attributes and then either strength in dex, and then you get some flat energy shield, increased energy shield, and that's pretty much it. I'm allocating insightfulness still because I just was kind of lazy to put change it around, but there's quite a few other ones you can get. You can go look around on the passive tree, pick some other things up. Yeah, that's pretty much the gear. Let's talk about the soul cores. So weapon soul cores, best in slot is critical damage bonus. Right, and same thing with weapons. You can copy weapons, you can go put it in your build, you can change these kind of things around, right? You can see which one is more damage, and you actually have to put it in. If you look in this kind of window here, it's not going to really show you the correct thing. So if we put 2 attack speed runes here, you can see that it's actually 8% less damage than having the crit multi. Same thing, we could try adding increased elemental damage with attacks. And this is 7.6% DPS loss compared to our other crossbow that has the crit multi runes. Aside from that, just energy shield runes. If you need resistances, it's totally fine to put resistance runes in, like, I would say the boots and the hands, right? Because you look at me, I'm not even cold risk capped, and this character hasn't died once ever since I put this build together. So pretty tanky, even though we are having these kind of stats. We'll go over the defenses, I guess, of the build. Basically, the thought process for this is we get energy shield, right? Around 4,000 energy shield, preferably 5k. And then Grim Feast keeps us alive in maps. And we have a tiny bit of evasion to avoid some hits that makes it so we don't constantly drain all of our energy shield all the time. And since we are ranged, we're freezing, we're exploding, everything's just dying. Nothing really is hitting you that much, so this setup works out really good. For T4 bosses, they're dead before they can do anything, so it doesn't matter. We don't need acrobatics because there's no slams to avoid, and yeah, it works out pretty good. This even worked for me on like a pure melee character running this low evasion, just like evasion, and basically all you need is Grim Feast, right, and a little bit of evasion. But that being said, guys, I basically have been on this tree. I've gone like full DPS setup, you could say. You could easily cut out some of the damage, because I'm not taking things like Subterfuge Mask for extra evasion. There's more evasion here, there's more evasion here. You could easily go and get, 75-80% evasion with a minimal investment if you just cut out a little bit of damage. Okay, so let's go over some of the gems. So skill gems, we have Unbound Avatar. This is basically only used for bossing. And, if you don't want to have another button to press, you don't have to use this, but I think it is definitely worth it. Just using the plus lightning skills, more duration. So galvanic shards, right now I'm using ricochet, super critical. This one's not that important. I mean, it's not really giving that much of a bonus, but there's not really much else to put in here. So I have that in here, and then we have nimble reload, we have fork, and we have lightning infusion. So we actually technically only have 1 damage support in our galvanic shards, and it's already been doing like tons of damage, you can see. Now, shock burst rounds, this one might be a little bit controversial, you could say, and I'm using scattershot. And so you can see without scattershot we're at about 242 tooltip, but scattershot was actually the highest DPS setup, basically. And so there was like this thing going with like fresh clip and everyone started using it, but I think it's kind of bad actually, because fresh clip is only good when you have low damage. So I killed the boss before my clip was empty. Right, basically if 1 full clip, the boss is dead. So fresh clip actually does nothing for this build, right? And getting 2 extra projectiles, even though, yes, attack speed is a little bit slower, I'm still attacking at what, close to 20 attacks per second. So that's totally fine. And you can see in the bossing showcase, the boss is dead extremely quickly. And I did try without scattershot, I did try with fresh clip, and all those other setups were actually quite a bit slower. So we're using scattershot. Basically it's 3x damage or 2x damage, basically double damage, you could say, or not double damage because there is a less damage multiplier penalty, but I get the idea, right? Like 1.5 times more damage. Okay, and then we have Primal Armament, we have Elemental Focus, Concentrated Effect, and Martial Tempo. Okay, so for Tempest Flurry, this is what we're using to build up Shock. It also does apply Exposure, and then also gives us a little bit of Rage. Herald of Thunder, we'll go over these two setups over here, I guess. So this is your standard Herald chaining setup, or the one I'm running. We have Cold Infusion on Herald of Thunder, with Ice Bite, Glaciation, Inevitable Critical on Herald of Thunder. So on Herald of Ice, we have Innervate, Magnified Effect, Ambush, and Long Shot. Okay, Emergency Reload, Premeditation, Murderous Intent, Grim Feast. You know, you can put stuff in like Precision and Clarity if you have extra Spirit. And then Cast on Shock, and then Blink. Okay, and our Cast on Shock setup is Eye of Winter. This is pretty important because this applies critical weakness. And what that does is basically adding to your base critical strike chance. So if we take a look at the weapon, this has 9%, let's just say 9% critical strike chance. So if we have 100% increased critical strike chance, that's going to be 18% crit chance, right? And what this does is it adds 10% to this number. So instead of 9 crit chance, it's 19% base times 100, right? So you get way more base crit. And so if you take a look in PoB, you can see that's why we can get up to 71% crit chance because of Eye of Winter. Okay, so Eye of Winter for the crit, I have Deceleration because when you're in melee range, it's going to shoot out way too fast and all the projectiles are going to miss the boss. So we want the slow projectile speed. Oh, and do not quality your Eye of Winter because that's going to make it shoot faster. And you don't want it to shoot faster, you want it to shoot slower. Okay, then after that we have Voltaic Mark, Conductivity, and Heightened Curse. So that's our Cast on Shock. Very tight. I wish there was more links we can add to it. And then we have Unblink, we have Second Wind, Ingenuity, and Unbreakable. Okay, so, I mean, this is not really important. Anyways, let's go over the weapon swap or the weapon sets. So, Blink is on both sets. Cast on Shock is only active on set 2. Grim Feast is only active on set 1. We have Herald of Ice only on set 1. Herald of Thunder is also only, well, Herald of Thunder is on both. Basically need to only have Cast on Shock active on set 2, and the rest you can kind of fiddle around with and do whatever you want. But I recommend keeping Blink and Cast on Shock together on weapon set 2 because when we go over to this, we can still be attacking and then we can like blink around to like dodge, stuff like that. So it is kind of nice to have those two on your second weapon set. Alright, so as for the passive tree, in PoB, when I add these second weapon sets, it doesn't actually calculate them in the damage, so I probably won't really have the weapon sets in the PoB just yet, but in Mobalytics we'll have the weapon sets set up so you can go follow that. So basically we are doing a monk, right? So we're coming out here grabbing all this kind of stuff, and let's go over some of the jewels that we're using. Start over here, using a controlled metamorphosis. Massive, you know, this one's pretty popular. We get pure power, lightning quick. I don't really think we need this just yet. But anyways, you can grab some good nodes here. You could actually just cut this whole area out and anoint pure power instead of insightfulness because, yeah, not really all that important in this area. Save some points maybe. But this, like, this is pretty much kind of like a template. You could say a build template that, you know, I want you guys to use and you can customize to fit your needs. Basically, the important thing is that we just get all of these crit nodes. You can see we have all the crit nodes over here, over here, over here. Got some over here, and we have some crit nodes here, we have some crit nodes here, and that's pretty much it. The rest is just your standard stat stacking, kind of get some like attack speed nodes, get the dex, and that kind of stuff. One thing that is quite nice to have if you have the currency for it is to get a Varana jewel. Now, a lot of people will probably put it over here, but this is removing two very valuable points. I think for me is the skill speed and the 30% increased magnitude of shock. So I didn't want to add it over here, so I'm just adding it here. And since I'm not going to even bother with acrobatics, I'm just replacing acrobatics. Okay, so mine doesn't have anything good on it. It's just all we need is circular teachings. So it's going to give us quite a bit more energy shield. If you don't have it, you can see, yeah, about like 700 energy shield. As for jewels, I've just started actually getting some of these, but basically want maximum energy shield, crit damage bonus, crit chance, and then elemental damage. Those are the 4 stats you want. Most valuable is the maximum energy shield and the crit bonus. Those two stats, that's all you really need. And as you can see, that's pretty much all you want. Some of my old ones that I'm using are just like, if those ones are a little bit expensive, you can just go for max energy shield and increase elemental damage. Okay, so I'm using my Megalomaniac from the previous build, I guess. It's just giving me Deep Trance and Sharpened Claws. Might not even be worth it on this build anymore because I don't really have mana problems, but anyways. Keeping that, and then we have the Against the Darkness with the damages extra. Some lightning resistance actually does help me out because I'm pretty low on resistances. But yeah, that's pretty much it. Alright, let's go over the weapon swaps. First of all, I guess it's probably better if we go over the weapon swap on the staff set or the shock set, right? Because we're just getting all the shock magnitude, and then some trigger meta skills gain increased energy. It's going to help us proc it faster. We do need to proc or cast on shock 2 times to actually get to 10 stacks of critical weakness. A lot of times I notice the Eye of Winter on the first proc, it will only stack about 6 or so, or sometimes 7 stacks. So we do need to get it to proc 2 times. And then probably some better way to optimize this part here to get it so where it's, you know, instantly applying 10 stacks and that kind of stuff. So a little bit of work to do here, but this is just what we're doing right now, and it seems to be working out pretty good. And then we just get the more shock magnitude, and over here shock magnitude and duration. And the second weapon set is pretty much after that you just use whatever points you used on your weapon set 2 and then just put them into damage, right? Like crit, lightning damage, crit, and all this kind of stuff over here. As for Ascendancy, I'm going for the damage is extra cold. It's going to help with the heralds a little bit. I think if you want to get a bit more single target, this one is probably a little better to go this way. And then Unbound Avatar, I think it's really good. It's huge damage on bosses. And then we have Lead Me to Grace and Sunder My Enemy. Since we're not on full, we're not 100% crit, that's kind of why I'm still having the curse set up. So whenever I don't crit, those are actually still doing a good enough amount of damage. All right, so let's go over the PoB for the character real quick so we can explain what's going on here. Would like to know, first of all, there is a couple of bugs or some calculations are not being calculated correctly. So some of these stats might not be completely accurate, but considering we killed Zesh T4 in about 2 seconds, it's roughly going to be around this, maybe a little bit less or maybe more even, because first of all, shock isn't being calculated correctly in PoB. You can see if we put it down to even just 50% shock, our DPS is not going to change at all, because I think it's still using like the old, some other kind of weird formula, but you basically cannot even, 50% shock is the same as 100% shock, or, what we have at about 87%. So there are some things going on, so take this with a grain of salt. Let's first go over some of the configs we have here. We have some stuff for crit recently, and we obviously are doing non-crits recently as well. Due to the amount of attack speed we have, these two are pretty much always going to be active. We've definitely been shocking. And the enemy is shocked. We have a decent amount of shock effect, up to about 87% now, I believe. But like I said, this is kind of not really working. Now, for the custom modifiers, there's a couple of things we need to add over here because they are not being added correctly in PoB. So we have our Unbound from the Monk, that's 40% more damage, and then we have Eye of Winter. Now, Eye of Winter is adding base crit, right? So the best way to actually simulate that when we're on bosses is just to add this line to your custom config. Then we have Emergency Reload. This is the kind of stats that it's giving us, and since we are using only 1 clip per boss pretty much, it's going to be active pretty much, when we're actually killing the boss. So this is sort of the kind of stats that we're going to be having for our burst. If you want to look at what it looks like when we're mapping this, we should look at the galvanic shards, I guess. This is sort of the DPS numbers you're having on your galvanic shards, right? So quite a big difference you can see when we are not using all the tools from the Monk burst, the Eye of Winter, and then the Emergency Reload is actually making our damage just go up by a crazy amount, right? Okay, so that is that calculation over there. And then in order to actually get the correct full DPS stats, there's a couple of things we need to do. So first of all, since our shock burst round has a pulse and a bolt, we do need to add 2 skills to simulate what the actual DPS is going to be. So we have 1 shock burst rounds over here that is showing the projectile bolt DPS, and then we have 1 that is showing the pulse DPS. And since we're using scattershot, we have 3 bolts altogether, so we're just doing this times 3. So we have 3 bolts hitting the target. And yeah, like I said, some things are a little bit wonky, like the crit multi doesn't add up to what it is in game. So there's a couple of things that are kind of a little bit off. And if you want to look at what our max hit is, it's pretty respectable. Fizz looks kind of low, but in most cases we are going to be having Grim Feast like 100% during mapping. So it's, max hit stats are pretty respectable. And like I said, still haven't died on the character. So I think even this kind of character with these low stats is like totally fine to run. And you can configure it to be a little bit tankier. Maybe I'll make a tank version or a better all-round version, but basically you can cut stuff like this out here, anoint pure power on your amulet, and then you can go take some of these like Spectral Ward, you can take Subterfuge Mask, and cut out some more damage, get some of these stats, get a lot more evasion, run Wind Dancer, if I have it over here. Run Wind Dancer and you get up to like 10k evasion. If you want to run acrobatics, you're gonna have to invest a bit more, but there is some things you can do, and you can like just cut out some like damage or whatever, right? Yeah, I don't really think any of that kind of stuff is really necessary at all. Maybe at most I would come down to get the Subterfuge Mask, but yeah, that's about it. And okay, yeah, that's pretty much it, guys. Yeah, I'll have all the PoB and the links in the Mobalytics page, so make sure you go check it out and favorite it. Yeah, thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you next time.